Where does this end? So Texas barbecue all over the country? What if the Yankees get mad at us and they're like, oh, it's
Yeah.
not going to be Texas barbecue anymore? It's just never going to end. And you could go on and on. Someone doesn't like Rand Paul, so it's no longer the Kentucky Derby. It's now just going to be the horse race or whatever. Welcome to Silberman Law Firm's Weekly Docket, episode 61, where we discuss legal news and practical law. Today is March 14th, 2025, and I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the firm, and I'm joined by Austin Black, who is my co-host and works in our Dallas office. How are you doing today, Mr. Black?
I am good, aside from repeated sneezing. I think that time in Texas when allergies are starting to affect me, it's not great. I woke up and took a few allergy pills to try to assuage it, but we'll see how that does.
Yeah, allergies in Texas are nasty as we get into the spring, but you'll get through it. Lots of medication. What's on our docket today, Mr. Black?
So first, in our legal news section, we're going to be talking about something that a lot of news organizations have been covering on the arrest of, and I'll probably butcher his name, but Mahmoud Khalil. Someone who has a green card, got his master's degree in Colombia, but he was arrested while being protesting the current administration. And we'll talk about exactly whether you can do that when you haven't been convicted of a crime, if you're just a green card holder, if they have the same rights as U.S. citizens or not, exactly what a green card is if you don't know that, and whether we think that the Trump administration's approach to this is going to hold up in court, because there are a few lawyers working on it. And then we'll move on to talking about a deer hunter in Texas discovering a mammoth tusk at a ranch in West Texas. And if you were to be that deer hunter and you discover a mammoth tusk, could you keep it? Okay, there are a few different considerations there. We will go through those and let you know, should you find yourself blessed by a tusk, if you can keep. Okay, and then we'll move on to our legal questions section. First, answering a question that we get quite frequently here, and that would be why the county appraisal district for my various county does not instantaneously show a change in ownership and property. And doesn't that mean the change hasn't occurred? No, that's not the case. Okay, we will explain exactly what the appraisal district is, what actually governs ownership in Texas, and why, if you're having issues understanding that, maybe it's probably a good thing that you hired an attorney, because they're doing the right thing for you. And then we will be talking about if you can sue your realtor for then not informing you about the NAR's buyer/seller agent fee rule charge, which we talked about a little bit ago, about not having to pay both the buyer and the seller's commission. We'll go through that, whether you actually could sue someone if they don't disclose it. A bit of a spoiler, is probably would be quite difficult. But then we'll move on to our final section, rant and rave, where we're going to be talking about really stupid fights over names for absolutely no reason. Specifically here, the Texas Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, is attempting to rename the New York Strip cut of steak to the Texas Strip, which just sounds stupid in my opinion, but I guess maybe I'm giving the lead away there, and then we'll close.
All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and get it kicked off with our legal news section. And the first thing we're talking about is the protester Mahmoud Khalil, who was arrested recently, I think about a week ago. He was the one, Austin, that was involved with all these protests at Columbia. And it's for pro-Hamas, against Israel. Some would even say against Jewish people. He was very involved with these protests. He was arrested at the behest of the Trump administration. Now, and there's a lot of dispute here, he did not commit a crime. So the people on the left usually are saying he didn't commit a crime. How is it that you can just arrest somebody for protesting? He got his master's degree from Columbia. He is a permanent resident holding a green card. Austin, you were an immigration guy. So what does that mean if you've got a green card?
A green card is the step right before usually receiving your change of status to, if you have a green card, it's the step right before becoming a citizen. So you've gone through all the processes to become a permanent resident. There's employment pathways, there's family-based pathways, but you're at the end of the step. You've got a green card. You are afforded almost all of the same rights and responsibilities of U.S. citizens, but there are some particularities about a green card, which we're going to talk about here. Usually people, when they get a green card first, it starts off as a provisional green card and then converts to a permanent one within, I believe, around 5 years. It can vary. And then from that point, if you decide eventually you want to become a citizen, there are varying timeframes depending on how exactly you got your green card to actually do that if you want to. Now, Mr. Khalil probably would not want to become a citizen, seeing as he is not a fan of this country.
Oh, I don't think that's necessarily true. A
Yes,
lot
yeah.
of times, a lot of times they want to cause a ruckus here, but they know that it's better here than there. He's actually Syrian. He's the Palestinian region, or the country of Palestine, does not really exist. So very few people are truly Palestinian. I don't know if he was born in that region, but I believe he's of Syrian descent. But yeah, he may in fact want to live here and just continue to protest. From an optic standpoint, Austin, the American people, I think generally, whether you're talking about Democrat or Republican, don't like the idea of someone is given a green card, they're not a citizen, and then they're all of a sudden they get very involved in protests, right? So
Yeah.
I think the regular American looking at this, it does not like it. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with the law. I was just mentioning that from an optic standpoint.
It's just the common sense sort of thing, right? If you come to a country and you are a recipient of its immigration system, it welcomes you into its country, you're on the pathway to becoming a citizen of it. Feels like maybe you shouldn't be engaging in protests and things like that. I don't know. I don't really think that there should be a legal requirement stopping you from doing it. I just think maybe it's not the best idea.
Yeah, not as far. I am paranoid when I travel to foreign places. I always hear those stories about someone who goes to Taiwan and gets whipped with a cane. I know you've heard me mention about, I knew of a guy who was a school teacher in China. I don't know why he did this. He stole something and then ended up in a Chinese prison making Christmas lights. So just don't ever do anything illegal or close to illegal. Don't rock the boat when you're in a foreign country. But
yeah, I mean, I did, on the note, I did participate in the protests against President Yoon in Korea, though.
Oh, okay. See, you were walking a fine line. You could have ended up probably in some sort of prison in South Korea. We never would have seen you. Okay. You would not have come back. Your clients would have been calling us like, where's my attorney? And Chris and I would have been like, he's in a prison in South Korea.
I would be a political prisoner. Yes.
Yeah, it's a political prisoner in South Korea.
Proudly.
Yes. Good. I think Mr. Khalil wants to wear this badge proudly. Now he was arrested, did not commit a crime. There actually is a law. It's the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952. It allows a green card to be revoked under certain conditions. And it's for non-citizens, and I'm quoting, whose presence or activities in the United States, the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States, is then deportable. So the Trump administration is going to have to prove that Mr. Khalil's actions has potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, but that's the road they're trying to hoe.
He's got 19 lawyers from 19 different firms representing him. So either that's going to be really good or really bad because they can't coordinate. I don't know.
Yeah, there is such a thing as too many cooks in the kitchen. But now, most people, Austin, that get their green card revoked, they are committing crimes. It's a very routine thing. Someone goes out there, commits a crime, gets their green card revoked. So even though it's not, you can have a green card revoked without committing a crime, this is very rare. Most of the time, these are associated with a crime. Under this 1952 law, that's why he was arrested without committing a crime, and that's why we're trying to deport him.
With Colombia, though, and we're not going to get super deep into this because it's not the subject today, but I'm actually more interested in Colombia's, like the revocation of federal grants to Colombia on the basis that they apparently weren't doing enough to combat anti-Semitism on their campus, which was said by the Trump administration. And I just wonder about the constitutionality of that. If the money is just earmarked for education and the Trump administration has the authority to designate it based on, honestly, political preferences.
I don't think the Trump administration cares. They're moving so fast and so furious that the left cannot file lawsuits enough. And just the disruption of having the federal money pulled has been enough for Colombia to get their act together and start doing more. So it's almost one of those things where practicality is taking precedence over the actual legality of things.
Sad.
Which is maybe a little sad, but also a little bit scary. All right, we got to move on to our next piece. This piece is a little bit more fun, a little bit more lighthearted. We're talking about a deer hunter in Texas. He was out in the Lubbock area, and he was at a ranch, and he discovered a woolly mammoth tusk. And I did not know this, Austin, but many years ago, thousands of years ago, or millions of years ago, depending upon whether you're young Earth or old Earth, we're not going to get into that right now. But there were all these prehistoric.
You don't believe in a literal 7-day creation, folks?
We're not opening that up for discussion. Okay, now we're not open. We're talking about. We're just going to come to the places you have to enter this conversation with the premise that you believe woolly mammoths actually existed or other. They're most close. They're closest to an Asian elephant. I learned this. They're close to an Asian elephant. They stood about 12 to 15 feet high. They were not actually as fluffy. Have you seen the movie Ice Age?
Yes, I have seen the movie Ice Age.
We don't believe they were that fluffy. Now, I don't know how we would know that, but
why does everyone lie to me, Phil? Why does everyone lie to me? DreamWorks lies to me. It's so sad. So sad.
We don't know. There were also like saber-toothed cats roaming about. There were lions in Texas.
Did the saber-toothed cats at least look the way they did in Ice Age?
I don't know. I did not get it. I did not get into that.
Wow.
So what's the law on this, Austin? If you were out there and you found a woolly mammoth tusk on your property, do you own it or not own it?
Yeah, if it's on my property, if I own the property, then yes, I very likely own the tusk. But if it was not on my property, then it very likely is belonged by the landowner.
Yeah. Or if you find it on public land, you don't own it. So if you find a dinosaur fossil or a woolly mammoth fossil on public land, that is not yours. It belongs to the state of Texas.
Take it and you move it to your land and you bury it and then you dig it back up.
Yeah, that would be theft. So would you take it to a museum, Austin, or would you like hang it up in your house?
I think I'd probably take it to a museum. I don't think I'd want that in my house, to be honest. And I think I would like for other people to see it. And I don't think I would have a way to make sure it was preserved well in my house either.
Yeah, the scientists want you to bring it to a museum, so they're hopeful about that. This brings up an interesting, we discussed this before the show. I had never thought about this before, but this piece brings up something interesting about estates and a bundle of sticks. We're real estate attorneys primarily. We do all the time the bundle of sticks.
What's the word for a bundle of sticks, Phil?
I can't. Is that word inappropriate? Now, I'm not going to say that word. Okay, you're not going to bait me into that word for.
It's fine. My property professor actually used that word. So we were like, what? Oh.
He was using it correctly.
He's using it correctly, but some people were not aware of that.
Yeah, the whole world has been turned upside down. Now, the gay does not necessarily mean happy anymore, even though I live in a neighborhood called Gaywood. And so anyway, we're talking about a different kind of bundle of sticks. And if you want to take a stick out of your bundle where it's like a mineral estate or an air estate or a water land or a leasehold estate, these are all different kinds of sticks within the bundle. Yeah. Well, now, Austin, this has opened up a whole new area of practice for us. We're going to start severing fossil estates. So if you want to sell the right to somebody to be able to mine, I don't know if that's the right term, excavate, I guess, all the fossils on your property, you could sell that type of estate to them. And that could be a very valuable estate.
Yeah.
All right.
It definitely could be. But why would you want to sever them, Phil? Why would do you want to have two separate estates, like doing two separate things and one not knowing what the other is doing?
All right. Austin's referencing a very popular show on Apple TV, right? Yes. Yeah. Severed. There you go. All right. That's the whole law. So if you're ever walking around your property and you find a fossil and it's your land, it belongs to you. And call a real estate attorney if you want to sell your fossil estate. I think we've just made that up, but I think it will work. All right. That brings us to the next section of our show. That's our legal questions section.
Yep.
And the first thing we're answering again, and this is for an attorney at our firm that has all these clients all the time. Look, people, there are appraisal districts out there in Texas, and their primary job is to appraise the value of real estate in Texas so that it can be taxed fairly. And then the county assessor collects those taxes. That has nothing to do with ownership records, even though people think that it does.
Yes.
So if a client calls us and they're like, hey, I need a deed, we draft a deed, we record a deed in the county clerk's records, then the client gets, oh, I don't see it changing in the appraisal district records yet. It will eventually update, eventually.
Yes,
but
eventually.
Common misconception. All right, there's the appraisal district. The appraisal district in Texas is not dispositive of ownership.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You have to go to the county clerk's records for that.
And we understand why people get to that perception, because to look up like ownership of a property or what you think is ownership of a property in Texas, the appraisal district is actually almost, it's through most sort of Google searches, that's almost always the first thing that's going to pop up for your county. And that's because it's the easiest to navigate for lay people. If you are attempting to look through what actually determines property ownership, which are the county clerk records, that's much more difficult. You need to have a full legal description of the property, know exactly how to navigate those interfaces, which are complicated, and they shouldn't be, to be clear. That's not on you. That's on the government for making them extremely complicated to navigate. But if you aren't in those day in, day out, it can be difficult to look up and like actually see the chain of title with various deeds and transfers and everything. And so people usually just look up the CAD, the appraisal district, but it's not dispositive, as Phil said, of ownership.
Yeah, there you go. Now, the other kind of ancillary question we're getting to this is, if I want my appraisal district records to update, how do I do that? And I'll tell you, most people don't want the appraisal district records to update because they don't want their name in the public records where it's very easily searchable on the appraisal district. But let's say you want the appraisal district records to update. You can take your instrument, your deed, your affidavit of heirship, your order from the court that the attorney got you, and just go down to the appraisal district record, the appraisal district, stand in front of the employee there and say, hey, here's my deed evidencing ownership. Please update your records showing me as the owner of the property. You can do that, no problem. So,
my legal advice is to actually bring 2 cans of silly string and stand there in front of them and say, if you do not update it right now, I will spray you with this silly string. That works. The appraisal district, they really like that. If you do that, trust me.
There could also be a criminal assault. Also a criminal assault. This is not related. This is related to the question, but not exactly on point. I want to mention this real quick. If you're out there and you don't want your name in the appraisal records, which you should not for privacy purposes, you can call the appraisal district and tell them just to list current owner. And then it's more anonymous. And there are some people like me, if you own different businesses and you've got people that may not like you all the time, right? If you're a business owner, like, you may want to have current owner in the appraisal district records. You may want to enter a request with Google to have your house blurred out on Google Street View. Now, you can't really manipulate the county clerk's records as easily. So that's still going to be the real place where you can go see names and ownership. All right, that brings us to our next legal question. And this one is suing your realtor for not informing me about buyer-seller agent fee rule change. Okay.
Which is the National Association of Realtors, for anyone that forgot. We last talked about them, but yes.
So there was a rule change in July of 24, Austin,
which we talked about on the show in July.
Yeah. Yes. Well, let's just get a quick kind of refresher.
Sure.
if you're a realtor listing a house for someone representing the seller, it used to be prior to July, you would be required to enter a buyer's agent commission. And almost automatically in places like Texas, it was entered as 3%. The realtors got sued saying that was basically an anti-competitive practice. They settled the lawsuit. And what they've done to remediate this now is now realtors are no longer able to put an offer of buyer's agent compensation in the MLS. What they're doing instead is they're saying that the seller is willing to pay a certain amount of expense for a buyer's agent commission, which, if you ask me, it's like tomato versus tomato.
Yeah.
I think this is just completely stupid, but that's what we're doing now. So we got this one question, and the guy said, Austin, okay, I closed on my house in August, right after the rule changed, and my realtor told me that I didn't have to pay a buyer's agent commission. So I want to sue my listing agent now for the buyer's agent commission that I had to pay. What do you think about that case, Austin?
I think it's probably not that great of an argument because you're really trying to the underlying argument wouldn't be a breach of contract. It would be a breach of fiduciary duty. And while realtors do owe fiduciary duties to their clients, paying the buyer's agent commission is very likely not going to mean that the listing agent breached their duty. They didn't have a affirmative duty to disclose to you that rule change. You could have looked it up. It's public record. There's nothing saying that if they don't inform you of that, they breached their fiduciary duty.
Yeah. If I were to make the argument for breach of fiduciary duty here on behalf of this person who's upset, I would say, okay, the realtor owes a duty, or maybe you're just talking about some sort of professional negligence. Maybe that's a little bit easier of a burden. And the idea is, okay, if I hired a competent real estate agent or realtor, they would have known that my house is in a hot market and I don't have to pay a buyer's agent fee. They could have offered way less. Like instead of 3%, they could have offered 1%. And then you're going to have to get these other realtors to get up there and testify that, oh yeah, nowadays in a hot market, we never offer 3%. And then maybe you start to build this case of negligence. I don't think you get there on breach of fiduciary duty. I think the problem with these cases is that most realtors are still offering the 3%. Maybe they're still opening themselves up to some of these anti-competitive practices and violations. Maybe they haven't done enough. I don't know, but there you've got it. I've made the case for maybe a negligence claim. I think you're going to have a problem. I don't think this is a strong case, but at least we've got the framework of the law now.
I agree.
Yeah.
But it's not a case in suing over a stake name.
Yes. Okay. That Austin is going to bring us right into my favorite part of the show, which is our rant and rave section. This story kind of caught my attention. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in Texas decided to float the idea of proposing a Senate bill that says we're no longer going to call New York strips in Texas New York strips. We're going to call them Texas strips because we're the king of beef. And what do you think about that?
Trust me, yes, I was not born in Texas, okay, but I definitely see this as my home. I've lived here for most of my life. I'm pretty nationalistic when it comes to Texas, okay, or statistic, whatever you want to say. And even I am like, this is just really stupid. Like, I don't think anyone cares. I really wish that Dan Patrick would be spending his time doing things actually helpful for our state.
Well, this all started with Donald Trump's Gulf of America thing.
I know.
So now every right-wing politician is thinking, okay, we have to start renaming.
Every right-wing politician now, they just want to suck Donald Trump's toes until the cows come home. I know, and it's just crazy to me. Just because this dude is doing things that, like, he thought of while he was on the toilet doesn't mean everyone has to go and start doing it, okay? Maybe it was funny like the first 20 times, but then past that, it just gets... When we call Canada the 51st state from the press secretary room, for like the 50th time. Like, it was funny the first 10 maybe, but not anymore. It's just getting juvenile.
I actually love that one. I really do think Trump is right. I do think Canada makes a better state. I think they
But
are
like,
so
even if he is right, I just feel that it's extremely disrespectful to another sovereign nation to be acting like that. I don't know.
I see what you, but look, I'm a conservative guy. I'm a little libertarian. I'm not a Donald Trump fan, but it does resonate with me. $200 billion a year in subsidies to Canada
Oh, no.
does resonate with
I agree with you. And I think that all of the
Yep.
trade discourse, I mentioned like last week in a
Yep.
callback, I think all the trade discourse with Canada is not giving the full picture, that it was not completely free trade with Canada. They had a lot of tariffs on us before were imported on before tariffs were placed on them. But even with all that, I don't think we should be going around saying Canada's going to become the 51st state, calling the Prime Minister of Canada the governor of Canada.
I like that one. I like that one.
And then saying we're going to take over Greenland, like elbowing the UN chief, be like, you could really help us with that, acquiring Greenland. It's like, what in the world is going on? I don't know.
All right, we got to have to finish this New York Strip piece.
Okay. New York Strip.
Yeah, the restaurant in New York, it was Delmonico's. It was a famous New York restaurant. It was originally referred to as Delmonico Steak, and then it ended up becoming a New York Strip. That's how it got to be. And now Dan Patrick's idea of let's pass a bill that changes the name. First of all, I don't think those are hollow, empty bills, right? You can't force everyone to start calling something by a certain name. We still have First Amendment protections in this country. So this is clearly a political move. The restaurateur who decided he says he's going to file a lawsuit against the state of Texas. He's out of Albany. His name's Todd Shapiro. The name of the restaurant is the War Rim Tavern. I'm even hesitant to say the name because he's obviously doing this for publicity for the restaurant, but there it is. And I doubt he even files the lawsuit. And if he files it, it's going to get dismissed. This is all just political posturing is all this is.
Yes. Worst. This is so good. I hate it. I hate it. Can we please just do things that are helpful to people?
My point on this is, where does this end? Just get over it, okay? So, like they're French fries. And let's say I know that French fries did not come from France, but you don't like France one day. Or like
don't rename them Belgian baguettes. I don't care. Okay.
Right. Where does this end? We've got all kinds of examples. It's if you're serving so Texas barbecue all over the country. What if the people in the Yankees get mad at us and they're like, oh, it's not going to be Texas barbecue anymore? It's just never going to end. And you could go on and on. Someone doesn't like Rand Paul, so it's no longer the Kentucky Derby. It's now just going to be the horse race or whatever. So it's got to stop. You just have to get over it. Yeah. The nomenclature is not material. There you go.
Do you think that's what the U.S. government is going to file in its response briefs to Mahmoud Khalil's attorneys? Just get over it.
Just get over it. I mean, look, we'll see how that one comes up. We're going to keep everybody posted on the New York Strip lawsuit and Mr.
You can keep everyone posted on the New York Strip.
You follow Mahmoud Khalil's deportation and you keep us updated.
Okay.
All right. That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silberman. Thank you to my co-host, Austin Black, for joining us today. Mm-hmm. Remember to like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice, and this has all been for entertainment purposes only. Yep. If you have a legal question, send it to info@silblawfirm.com. That's info@silblawfirm.com. We will try to answer it, and everybody have a good weekend.
Yep. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Bye, everybody.